Hello and welcome to the Spiritual Solopreneur Podcast. If this content resonates, please like and subscribe. Today, my guest is Lily Rae. Lily is a soul-led business mentor and intuitive guide who helps lightworkers channel their soulmate clients, resulting in synchronicity becoming a part of the sales process. Transformation is a huge part of the process, and in fact, her community is called Metamorphosis. The goal is to help lightworkers build soul-led wealth through spiritual gifts and become good stewards of wealth on the planet. Welcome, Lily.
Welcome. Oh, thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here. I almost said welcome. I'm cracking up, but it's so good to be here. And thank you for the introduction. I can't wait to chat deeper with you today.
Awesome. Well, I'm really looking forward to chatting with you about, because we're going to talk about sort of spiritual stuff and
Yeah.
spiritual entrepreneurs and spirituality and also kind of like sales and marketing kind of stuff,
The
which is
whole the
the
whole mix.
the whole enchilada.
Yeah, really.
Especially I especially like this idea of soulmate clients because
Mhm.
traditionally, you think of soulmate, it's like, oh, there's one, that's it. You got one, and it's usually a romantic partner type of thing. But I don't know about you, but I think we have multiple soulmates and potential soulmates in every lifetime, and it can be friends, family, clients, whatever, right? Am I right?
Agreed 1,000%. I agree so much.
And so for your audience, you're working with light workers. What's your definition of light worker?
Yes, I love that question because it is a word that a lot of people define differently. I've actually even heard people think of the term as like almost the love and light type, where I actually think light workers are here to do the deep work. So I'm going to explain kind of how I started using this term and then kind of how I define it. So this was actually a word that was given to me when I was channeling my soulmate clients. So that was not a word that I decided to use. It was one that was given to me. And it was actually when it was given to me, that was when synchronicity really started to take place in my business. And I can't wait to tell you even more about, just kind of those processes and what that feels like and whatnot. I started having people coming to me out of the woodwork, essentially saying they saw signs to work with me. So my view of light workers is are people who essentially feel connected to source to share their gifts. And I think there's so many different variations of light workers, creatives, I think there's light workers in all different facets of the world, people who really feel a strong calling to again share healing on the planet. And so specifically the word light worker and the way that I use it is for intuitive healers, energy healers, people who typically again have that connection to the divine through gifts. And though I also believe that all humans have spiritual gifts, I believe that light workers typically it's like a soul calling that they feel to use their gifts and, essentially help transmute the planet. So it's not necessarily light workers of the love and light, it's light workers who are here to kind of like help transmute energy on the planet.
Nice. And you mentioned channeling that word. When did you realize that you had gifts and all
Yeah.
that? And how did your friends and family react?
Yes. Oh my God, that's honestly the best question to ask with it. I feel like on these, like when I've done other podcasts with people, we talk about this stuff, but it's so real, the reactions of the people around you and your family. So honestly, since I was little, I've been really sensitive to things. I actually have an uncle who passed away pretty suddenly when I was a kid on my 10th birthday, actually, and we've always been very soul connected. And I remember feeling his energy in the house that he had passed in. And that was actually when I kind of repressed my gifts because I said something to the adults and they were all like, what? They're like, what are you talking about? And whatnot. So I've always been, highly sensitive. And, I started going about my life. I knew I wanted to do psychology. So again, I was always really tapped into wanting to understand patterns, people, sensitivities, and just this kind of innate like healing energy that I just, of course, at that time it was very, it has now been not purified in a way. Of course, it was always coming from a pure place, but I had a lot of things that were stirring in my life and a lot of traumas that I was able to purify. But so what happened was post grad, I'd been working a corporate job because I did not follow my calling in college. I wanted to do psych, got talked out of it. And I went through a really tough time around 8 or so years ago, 8 to 9 years ago now, that forced me to kind of start looking at my own patterns because I was so focused on the patterns of the people around me and just making sure everybody else was good. And so around that time when I started going inwards, it just started getting louder. There were subtle things. I started getting signs about clairvoyance. People even started telling the tall tale of the witching hour, which I'm sure you've heard about.
I have
Every
not. I have not.
Oh, okay. So this is perfect. I'm glad I said that. So, because this is something that once you see it, you don't see it. But
Okay.
people always say if you wake up between like 2 and 4, it's the
Oh,
witching hour because it's when the veil is the thinnest and whatnot. And
gotcha.
so people would say those things kind of just in passing, but then I would actually wake up at that time, and not only that, I would wake up at 222, 33. So the angel numbers started.
Mm-hmm.
And so during COVID lockdown, it all kind of opened up. It just was like I could not ignore it anymore. And so things started to kind of stir around me. I started to really, start to explore and get comfortable with even the idea of this. And I started having a lot of synchronicities, dreams that started, kind of coming to fruition. And I slowly started telling people around me. Honestly, I felt incredibly supported by the people around me, but that's not to say it wasn't terrifying. I actually, when I first created my social media pages and I was, started my business primarily as a medium, is kind of the word I would use. I was kind of coming out of the spiritual closet, and I really did have a lot of fear that I would lose a lot of the people in my life. But in reality, a lot of people have supported me really deeply. My lifelong friends have just gotten to know me deeper. My family's been supportive, so I can't complain. It has been honestly the best.
That's awesome. And because you had that fear, I guess, too, you're able to relate to your clients now, right? Who are kind of, I'm assuming that your clients now are where you were a few years ago.
Yes. Oh my gosh, 100%. I'm also curious to hear too if this is something you feel connected to with the gifts piece. But yes, 100%. There's a really deep visibility wound around sharing spiritual gifts. And, that's a lot of, I mentioned my brand being called Metamorphosis. So a lot of what I also help people with is not only the, channeling soulmate clients part, but specifically the really deep body-based work. And, the visibility wounds are so real because it is kind of a taboo thing. People misunderstand it. People assume that, people that haven't, this is my observation, people that haven't used their spiritual gifts or, have just shied away from it in general, like there's a misunderstanding of, oh, this could be demonic or, these things. These are narratives that still do get passed around, even if it is unbased, not based in anything, but like the old stereotypes. And so, there is a really, really big visibility wound. I feel like a lot of light workers have really deep abandonment wounds. So that's another really big thing I noticed, especially and I, to this day, I still help light workers start their businesses too and like kind of do that initial work and then channel their soulmate clients. And a lot of what comes up is that fear of abandonment, the visibility wound of being seen in our gifts, and just what that means, honestly, historically. It's a very, very powerful thing. Anytime I see someone online sharing their spiritual gifts, it's honestly the depth of that is very powerful, considering it's been something that's been very misunderstood.
Exactly.
And ironically, also the thing that is such a key to the planet kind of being rebalanced.
Mm,
So,
hmm and do you think that it comes from past lives, probably? Some of this
oh yeah.
visibility, abandonment, all this kind of thing. It must be from ancestral or past lives as well.
Yes, absolutely. I'm glad you asked that too because that was part of what was going through my head when I was talking about that. A lot of it is, a lot of light workers have shared their gifts and kind of, I look at it as all humans, we have different roles on the planet, and a lot of times light workers have kind of played this role many times. They've also played different roles, and so they have already kind of been the rebels who've, the witch hunts. I think about that. I think about, honestly, anyone who's like stood up and shared their voice. People like Martin Luther King, like that to me is someone who, I don't know his entire story, but
Major
so
light worker.
major light workers. And so yes, these people are often have been killed. And a lot of times that's actually I've done this work with clients while we're kind of working together and these things will come up for them. So yes, absolutely. It's also deeply ancestral. For me, my ancestry is very Irish. And the Irish, oh my gosh, there was like a really huge religious takeover. There was about 500 years they were ruled by the British, and it was like a very violent time for, especially, they used to not celebrate, but they used to practice paganism, and Catholicism kind of came in and violently took over, killed their priests, priestesses, and whatnot. So that it's something that actually for me has been running very deep, just even in, the ancestral history for my family and whatnot. So
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
I think it runs so deep for in so many different ways.
So you're totally able to relate to these folks. So we're seeing light workers in the way of spiritual entrepreneur, healer, energy workers, that type of thing, and wanting to share their gifts, wanted to start a business, maybe not wanting to be too visible at first.
Yes.
So how do you how do you deal with them from that point of view, or do they not have to be visible?
Yeah, I love this question because this is actually going to tie in really well to kind of how I teach people
Yeah,
this
that's
method
my
and
next thing.
chan
So if you want
and
to, you
ch
can just flow right in there if you into it if
perfect.
you like. Yeah.
I love this. I love your questions. They're amazing. So basically, the way that I look at it is every light worker, every human really on the planet, but every light worker has a soul blueprint that essentially kind of shows them exactly how they're meant to show up in the world. And so I mean, it's not even just a belief. I really have a knowing that every light worker that comes to me specifically and feels that call to jump into my space, they are meant to be online and they are meant to be visible. So a lot of what I do is typically in the online space. It's not that they can't have clients that they find offline, but it's a lot of their clients are online. So I help them specifically with the online component, making content and how to make content in a way that creates synchronicity and whatnot. So this blueprint really makes it laser clear. And so I'm going to tell a teeny bit about my story quick because when I went through my awakening, especially in 2020, I just something in me knew that I was meant to be on social media, even though that was really terrifying to me because I was taught to really hide just in my own life experience. I'm pretty outgoing, extroverted, but the thought of being online was genuinely terrifying to me. Like if I was more confident about being online, I probably would have started doing it then, but it took me multiple years
Mhm.
from that point. And so I just had this really intuitive knowing that I was meant to be online. I actually bought this ring light that I'm using right now in 2020, and I didn't use it for 3 years. I don't know why I bought it. I still don't understand why I bought it. So this, I find that through this channeling process, and what's so interesting is that again, most of the light workers I work with, it's very confirming of like online, which like social media profiles, like that's even the type of information that this will show up in their meditations unsolicited. And a lot of times I will also take people through these meditations and really, take them through, okay, where are you supposed to show up? How are you supposed to show up? And what's interesting is I have had light workers who don't necessarily feel that huge calling to be online. And so, but I would say 9 times out of 10, they feel that calling to be online. So typically the way that I help people navigate it is, look, this is like the soul's calling. It isn't just, oh, be online and go, make a big name and do all this. No, it's actually like that's where your soul is meant to show up. And it helps to really neutralize a lot of the things around it. It doesn't mean that it won't be challenging, but it kind of gives the light worker this very clear guidance of, okay, this is how you're being asked to show up. And I truly believe our soul's blueprint is our soul's highest expression. So the soul wants to be online, and if they were to build a business offline, there would always be this itch that they couldn't quite figure out. And obviously light workers are brilliant. I'm sure they would figure it out either way, but that is my theory, is that if they were to not scratch that soul itch, it just there would be a lot of signs leading them online. Even if their ego was like, nope, 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 there would always be an itch. So yeah.
Yeah. And so the blueprint, I find that very intriguing. It's sort of,
Yeah.
is there any astrological or human design type of component to this blueprint?
Love this question. You're seriously, these questions are brilliant because yes, this is something that multiple people I've worked with, as we're channeling together, which first off, I'm just giggling because I'm like, these sessions are so fun. And so I'm thinking of all the times we've had these epiphanies together, and I can talk a bit about my own too, because of course that's how I'm going to kind of give the most detailed info. But I've worked with clients where, you know, their blueprint is kind of showing the way their life is meant to be and how they're even this is probably the most specific one that I see a lot is that a lot of times I'll pull in their metamorphosis self, which is essentially the highest embodiment of this of themselves in this blueprint. So the metamorphosis self kind of leads the way. It's like the version of them that's already living this blueprint. And a lot of times the metamorphosis self will show up in a certain type of outfit. It'll show up in like clothes that feel very fitting for their highest self. And what I've found, and we found this with multiple clients, is that the way that they dress is very, very linked with their midheaven, their Venus sign in their astrology chart. And so that was also the case for me. I started to realize that I just started dressing this way, and I noticed that a lot of people responded to it. And, I kind of, my clients go through these glow ups. I went through kind of this glow up, and people really noticed it. And when I actually went into the astrology of it, and I have a bunch of astrologer friends, they were like, this is literally so in alignment with your midheaven. It's so alignment with your like Venus sign. I'm a Libra Venus and whatnot. So yes, there's really these components that pop out, especially human design in terms of, especially when we get into the details of, kind of how they're meant to live their day to day and how they're meant to shape their business. What I love about the blueprint is that it is not a cookie cutter thing at all. It's very much tailored for that individual. I've actually worked with a lot of projector clients who do have a very, very unique energy type. And it's never about, this is how you have to show up. To a degree, I'm always here to push people to show up consistently and all that kind of stuff. But it's more tailored for, okay, what is in alignment with your unique energy signature? Because, especially when it comes to building a business that is sustainable, those pieces are important as we know. So yeah. So yeah, those components are very, very tied in with the blueprint.
Very cool. That is so interesting. Um, so what do you find that your clients are, I'll just say I work with spiritual entrepreneurs too and so
Yeah.
on. And one big thing I find is they it's difficult sometimes to create a message for them because they do so many things and they always say they can help anyone, and they
Mhm.
can. So
Mhm.
I want to ask you, what do you feel about niching down? That nobody ever wants to. So,
Right? Oh my gosh. Yes. So this is exactly, I again love this because I felt the same way. So that's the irony of this all is that I have also been in that position. I had all the words for all the things and all the magic, and that's something too. Lightworkers can be like, whoo, one of my favorite things is I'll have clients that they'll type these like beautifully immaculate sales pages and they're like pages long. And I'm like, oh my God, I love all these words. Yeah, let's go. Because they are so passionate and there really is just so much magic. So what I call it is focusing. Instead of niching, I call it focusing because the way that I look at it is that our soul clients, when we focus on a very particular thing that we're here to solve for a particular person and we focus our gifts that way, what happens is synchronicity. So this is truly like what I believe is the antidote to this kind of cycle of healers feeling as though, money is a challenge for them. My theory of it all is that it's healers just don't have that knowledge of what is their actual like divine assignment and their divine focus. There are plenty of healers who live abundantly and whatnot, and I truly believe those healers, whether, they've channeled their soulmate clients directly or even know that they are or not, they are tapped in with that focus and this focus, the way that I tailor it in my spaces is for the soulmate clients that they have soul contracts with. So when we look, so what I do is I channel this energy. I channel the energy of the soulmate clients because that energy has the information of who these people are. There's a pattern. It's not, it's not, for instance, it's like, oh, this person who's dealing with a love related thing, or, they're moving through a divorce, or, then I could help this person who's trying to, go in their career and they're coming to me for a reading. It's no, I have this like divine creation that I'm meant to birth for this specific group of people. And so I had and this is some my clients too. Like when I first got these downloads, I had to really trust because my whole body was rejecting the whole idea of it. I had no idea when I started my business that I would be helping people in their businesses. I had no idea. I had a lot of resistance to that. I couldn't believe it. My mind was like, oh my God, now that I'm here doing this, I mean, gosh, I've been helping lightworkers for just a bit over 2 years now. And so around that time, 2 years ago, it was such a deep initiation in my body. I had to really do a lot of the inner work and get curious. And I started to realize like where my body was saying no because of misunderstandings. And so when I do this work with clients, typically the biggest thing that comes up is fear of success and fear of being seen. Because when we focus, there's just we're like funneling more energy towards us in a way because we're specific, and it's like there we catch people's eyes because we're speaking directly to them. For instance, I was technically being a bit more seen when I was more general, but it wasn't being seen by the right people. There wasn't synchronicity in my business. That was the biggest thing was I just my soul knew that synchronicity was supposed to be happening, and I didn't really understand why I felt synchronicity everywhere. So long story short, with this niching, yes, I believe that, every light worker healer has a divine assignment of who they're meant to be helping with their gifts. Because it's like if we all went into if we were all organized like a hospital, let's say that all of us were trying to help people the same way, there wouldn't be there would be kind of a mix, that'd be like going to a hospital and there's only general doctors. There's not the surgeons, there's not the neurosurgeons, there's not the heart surgeons. So it would be an unfunctioning hospital or just a hospital where people go and they're like, well, all these doctors can help me. Who do I choose from? So there's kind of this degree of kind of creating your own playing field when you allow yourself to surrender to soulmate clients. It is a huge surrender process. So because yes, it doesn't feel good at first until we realize that actually there's misinformation.
Interesting. So, with the divine assignment or the blueprint, do you
Yeah.
find that, I guess you do, you're just saying that you do find that they are completely at odds with what they find out is the divine assignment? They're- do they find that no, that's nothing like what I've been doing with my life up until this point, or is it more often already at least somewhat synchronized?
Yeah, so typically what I find is that, especially I've worked with a few people who've been in the space. I've actually worked with someone who's been in the space for about 20 years, and I've worked with people who've been in the space for 5, 10 years and whatnot, and some people who are newer in the space. I've definitely helped initiate a lot of light workers into their business. And what I find is that there is typically people coming to them without realizing who are in this profile of their soulmate client. And so, for instance, when I was doing, I did probably hundreds, if not close to 1,000 or more readings that were more general readings. I've actually also done like a bunch of love readings. That was for a minute one of my focuses, and before I understood. And so when I was kind of really close to getting these downloads about soulmate clients, I actually had the people that were the most, I would say, consistent to my pages. And I used to do live stream readings actually, which were really fun, honestly. And I still have people messaging me about those all the time. The people that were the most like glued to my lives were light workers. So I didn't think anything of it. Even though looking back, there was this like feeling in my body. And so when I've helped other light workers, typically it's like kind of right there, but they're just not seeing it the way that allows them to realize that this is a sign that they're meant to be helping these people. Typically, again, they what I find is people will kind of be in this frenzy of like, okay, something's not working, like they're signing clients and things are happening, but they there's just this soul itch of like, I know that my work is supposed to be, you know, I know that I'm meant to be like consistently busy and that, selling shouldn't feel like such an uphill battle, even if they, of course, are selling and serving clients. So yeah, typically it's their body is like reacting. It's almost like their body and their soul are at odds a little
Mhm.
bit. And then these epiphanies kind of like bring it in for sure. But typically there's things stirring even subtly. So sometimes they just need to see it in a different way. And so sometimes it's almost as simple as that. Sometimes, for people, it takes a minute to kind of really land who they're meant to be serving.
And once you figure that out,
Mhm.
that makes it like so much easier, right?
Definitely. I would say some of the challenge is being able to embody and own it. A lot of times imposter syndrome comes out because when we are forced to, or not forced to, but when we are invited to, and what can feel like being forced by our soul, and odds to our ego brain, when we are invited to focus and step into this iteration of ourselves and of our service to humanity, a lot of times we have to kind of, you know, claim these parts of ourselves that we have mastered, like and gone through in our lives to be able to help other people. So, for instance, I went on a very robust journey with money. I never thought that I would be able to be sharing my gifts this way. I thought I would be doing it when I retired from my corporate job after climbing the ladder. That's where I was. And so I went on this really deep inner journey around money and being able to even start my business. And so when that was kind of the initial step guided to me is I initiated a lot of light workers out of their corporate jobs and into their businesses. And that was kind of where the method all kind of fell into place. And now that's what I teach. But when that first came to me, it blew my mind. I literally was like, wait, what? I'm going to be helping people with this? That's crazy. And yeah, so, I really had to sink in with that. So it does make it easier, but initially it's like the world kind of spins its orbit. I actually make this joke that when you have the awakening around your soulmate clients, you feel, I don't know if you've ever seen Super Smash or Super Mario Brothers, like Smash Bros. It's like the game where they load the avatar in it. It's almost as if your whole world kind of spins in a really cool way. You kind of get loaded and you kind of feel like you're in a video game all of a sudden is
Mm.
actually like a lot of times what I tell people. So yes, in the long term, it makes it easier. I like to bring this point up because a lot of times people will be like, is this normal? Is this normal what I'm feeling? And then life just gets like so freaking magical. Clients start coming out of the woodwork. They start saying how they see signs to work with them. It's just a lot more of this like soul level bond that starts to happen. I've had people who say that they see the name Metamorphosis everywhere. I had a girl who joined a workshop who said that she saw a book called Metamorphosis fall off the shelf in front of her. So it's essentially the universe and the angels and, guides and source and God, like literally are guiding people to you. So life moves on a whole nother level. I mean, gosh, I have
Interesting.
so many stories.
So what is that? What does a session look like? Are you channeling for them?
Really good question. It's a mix of both of us. It's kind of a co-created. What I really like to do is a lot of what I teach is honestly guide like frameworks and guidelines that will last them forever. I'm also here as long as, all my spaces, people could plug in for 6 months to a year to years. But I really essentially guide people through the frameworks. But what I love about actually hopping on calls with people is that it's very co-created. So a lot of times I'll start getting downloads of things or kind of visions of things that help them to understand. And then at the same time, their channel is also open and channeling. A lot of times, kind of a session will start, we'll drop in, I'll ask questions, and then we go into a meditation together that's channeled. And then from there, it's an open channeling session. So in the meditations I lead, typically they're surrounding three pillars, which is the blueprint, the soulmate client, and then the metamorphosis self. And so I find that when lightworkers channel these three energies, it's very clear how they're meant to show up, how they're meant to lead, how they're meant to take action, how they're meant to, live their lives, along with how they're meant to position their business, how they're meant to make content. So it kind of covers all these pieces that It's almost like a soup. It's like a synchronicity soup. When these things are all kind of locked into place, that's when the synchronicity really takes a hold. So yeah, so it's a mix of both.
That's fantastic.
Mhm.
I mean, it'd be such a relief for these people who are, struggling and not sure if they should even be doing this and or who they're
Right,
doing it for, just to be able to really find that out.
right.
Um,
It's magic.
it is, it is. I want to ask you an AI question.
Yeah, I love that. Let's go.
What do you see? What do you see AI? How do you see AI fitting into lightworkers' businesses and
Yeah.
or your own business?
Yes, I love this question. So I'm very much in terms when it comes to copywriting and in terms of when it comes to interactions with humans in on our social media profiles, I'm very much a proponent of, human interaction and writing because especially with soulmate clients, it's really what I'm going to tell a little anecdote just to kind of make my
Mhm.
point clear here is I actually, when my business was like popping off that initial time, I that there was a period of time over the past year where I kind of, was repositioning my business and I got very nitpicky on my messaging. I got very perfectionist without realizing. And it was a really big awakening moment because I actually found that when my business first had that initial, kind of rocket ship moment is what I call it. When people started coming out of the woodwork, I sold out my group program after never selling a spot before. And, people signing up to work with me one-on-one, coming to Egypt with me. This was all in the span of like 6 to 8 months. All this magic was happening and still
Wow.
happens all the time. But it was kind of this moment. And then I was asked to reposition. What I found was that I got very nitpicky on my messaging, and that kind of like took me into the gutter for a minute when I was kind of
Down
repositioning
the
and
rabbit hole.
down the rabbit hole. And so what's so interesting about AI is I think it's such an amazing tool. I love brainstorming with AI. I think it's really interesting to kind of have AI in your pocket. I think it's a beautiful tool. I think when it comes to soulmate clients and messaging, my understanding of it is that people want to feel you. And that was also actually another huge epiphany during this time and kind of, lining the work for my group now called Take Flight was essentially also really coming online with personality. Like what is the personality that you essentially are meant to show online and in an authentic way. Essentially what I mean by this is kind of like helping light workers to unleash the personality that they're hiding because we're taught
Mhm.
to show up serious and show up this way. So I think when it comes to AI, like when it comes to using it in copywriting for soulmate clients, I have yet to experiment with it, but my understanding is that it could block that connection and voice. But again, I think it's an incredible tool for a lot of the behind the scenes things. I think it is an incredible efficiency tool. I got some cats over here. They're really
Is
you might have
that a feather?
yeah, they like to join for certain calls and
Do you
they're
get
both right
orbs
behind
sometimes
the
in the videos?
Yes, like that. It's like my cat hair, like flying
Yeah,
everywhere. Yeah, I got two of them right behind to the right of the computer right now, so
nice.
they're the best. I joke they're like my little angels. But
Yeah.
so yeah, again, AI, amazing tool. I think when it comes to the interactions, it would, I definitely believe in like using our voice first. But I do honestly love using AI to do a good brainstorm of like, okay, this is what I'm thinking of writing or writing about. Like, what's your thought on this? And then like making sure it's in my own words.
Yeah, exactly. It's another
Yeah.
tool. And I always, people always say, ask me, well, what about AI and SEO and things like that? And
Mhm.
I always say, well, if you want to impress AI, be as human as possible because it's not impressed by AI is not impressed by AI type verbiage, right?
So I love that. That's so good. I was like, I want to hear your thoughts too on AI. I love that.
Yeah. So, um, okay, so what are your offerings? You do one-on-one sessions? Do you have group sessions? Do you have classes? How does it work?
Yeah, so I do have a few different tiers of things. I'll kind of give just a quick overview. So a lot of the work I do feel called to do is group work. That's kind of, again, in my blueprint, how I've been shown how I'm going to be serving is a lot of group work. So my group program is called Take Flight, which actually, you know what? I'm going to show you this because I think you're going to love it. So this is from 2018 when I worked in corporate. It says take flight, and that was my corporate job. So,
Okay.
so this was actually
So
something
you were on the right track, just not,
I
not the
know,
right type of job.
right? So funny. I used to work in corporate advertising, so this is so funny how it's all kind of fallen into place. But so that was actually something I found a month after my group program launched, which is hilarious. I randomly found it while I was cleaning out my house. So had to share because it's all linked
Random,
to the
huh?
conversation. I know, I'm like pretty random.
Yeah. What a
So
coincidence.
Take Flight is the space where light workers who are ready to channel their soulmate clients and channel these three pillars. That's like the full dive in space. I do also have a membership space, so I kind of have a few pockets for wherever people are able to show up and whatnot and whatever kind of they're looking for. So the membership is very much focused on the blueprint and the metamorphosis self. There is a bit of channeling soulmate clients as well, but a lot of the membership is for people looking to kind of plug in and get tune-ups, whereas Take Flight, we go really deep together. We do a lot of channeling together, even in the group. And I also do have one-on-ones as well. I call my one-on-one work the Monarch experience, which is really fun. That was also like all these names are channeled. The membership is called the Butterfly Effect. So it's all butterfly flying
Oh,
related.
nice.
Yeah,
Nice.
so I do have a kind of a few different pockets of things. My recommendation to people who feel very passionate about this work is always Take Flight because that's where, it's always such a fun group of people. I really, really, what I love about the soulmate client work is that everybody is also kind of soulmates too. I've entered a lot of people I've met in these group spaces and become really good friends. I've also traveled around the world with some of them. That's part of the magic of soulmate clients is I'll kind of create these travel experiences for light workers and they'll see signs for them. So that's something else that I do that I find really fun about this work is we travel to a location and we channel together. So fun. I mean, there's so much that goes into it more than just,
Yeah.
but yes, so those are a bit of my offerings. Yeah.
Beautiful. Well, do you have a message for the audience that you'd like to leave us with before
Mm,
we before we
yeah,
go?
I love that. Gosh, so much comes to my head, but I think the biggest thing is that if you feel as though things are not working for you for some reason, it has nothing to do with you. Your gifts are meant to be shared. You know that. I know that's for those listening that have pushed through the hard times. Maybe you're someone who's like in the really magical time, you've kind of had things come through. But if you're someone who feels this, like, why aren't things working for me, but they're working for this person? It's just that you aren't exactly where you need to be because you have more magic to share than where you are now. So it's almost just like you're in the wrong playing field right now. It has nothing to do with you. And the more that you continue to move forward, the more that these synchronicities will point you in the right direction. And, of course, if you feel called to this work, I'm here to help you find those. But I truly believe that every light worker is being pointed to their blueprint, being pointed to their soulmate clients. And so my hope is that in listening to this, even just getting some hints of what this all means with soulmate clients, that it starts to point you in that direction. So this is my message to you is to not fall for the trap of things aren't working for me because they are. And what when you do tap into this and even just this frame of thinking, like what's on the other side is just truly magic. It's truly so fun and so magical.
Beautiful.
So keep pushing.
It's a matter of tuning the radio dial to the right spot.
Exactly that. It's almost like, yeah, it's just
To use
there's
the
just two
old
more stations
parlance
over. No, it's
of a
so true.
radio.
No, seriously. No, that's the best one though, because it's just there's a frequency tune away. You're not that far.
Yes. Yes.
You already have the
Yes.
gifts to share. It's just about tuning it. Yeah. So I love that. That's
Tuning
so good.
in.
Yes. I love that.
Awesome.
Amazing.
And how do we get in touch with you? What's the best way?
Yeah, I would say Instagram is the best way. I feel like that's just the most, interactive, when people join on Instagram, there's just already a lot of information on my Instagram. It almost feels like a little profile where we get to kind of interact with each other. Even, for instance, you follow me and I'm not necessarily online in that moment. You get a real feel of, what this work is about, if you do feel guided to this, or even just being at the page and getting some of the downloads. So I would say Instagram. I do have email and whatnot as well, but Instagram
Okay,
is just, I think, where really plugs in together. So yeah,
super. Okay, well, we'll get all the info required down in the description box and we'll be good to go.
amazing.
Lily, thank you so much for being here. It's been a fabulous conversation. I have loved every second,
Same.
and we will talk to you again soon. Okay?
Good. Thank you
Hey,
so much for having me.
not a problem. And I'm Bev Young, and I help spiritual and conscious entrepreneurs get more credibility and visibility online with websites they love and that work. If you'd like a free evaluation of your current site, let me know. See you next time. Bye for now, Lily.
Sounds good.